Tampon Tim is the name that we, collectively, conservatives, have given to Tim Walz. And I'm really happy about this, not only because it's funny, it's hilarious, but also because, to be honest, Republicans misfired a little bit when Kamala Harris staged that coup against Joe Biden and then was installed as Democratic nominee for president. Republicans weren't very cohesive on their messaging against Kamala Harris. How are we going to attack her? What is the best argument against her? How do we reach independent voters? Whether this is black people who are disaffected by Democrats ruining their cities, whether this is women who are falling prey to the abortion narrative, whether it's just plain old independents in the Midwest who kind of voted for Obama and then voted for Trump and then voted for Biden. How do we reach these people? And the Republican Party did not have a cohesive strategy against Kamala Harris, and it showed. We mentioned last week on the show that in the first week after Kamala Harris was installed as Democrat nominee for president, her approval rating went up by 9 points, meaning her approval rating compared to Donald Trump flip-flopped by 9 points. That's not a good thing. But what happened yesterday, this was late yesterday, after Tim Walz had been announced as Kamala Harris's running mate, is the Republican Party. This is actually particularly conservatives online. This is why I love X. Love X. Thank you, Elon Musk, for free speech. Because if not for X, if not for Elon Musk fighting for our free speech, then the mainstream media and Kamala Harris's campaign would have branded Tim Walz as Coach Tim. In that rally that Kamala and Tim Walz did yesterday, she literally called him Coach Tim and Coach Walz. She is trying so hard to make him this Midwestern values dad who's relatable to the every white man. She is trying so hard to brand him, to have you perceive him as such. And she probably would be successful if not for X. If not for Elon Musk protecting free speech on X, he would be Coach Tim. But now, thanks to X, he's Tampon Tim. And it's funny. It's salacious, and it encapsulates everything that we need to know about Tim Walz, that he bought into gender ideology. In the state of Minnesota, your child can be transed without your permission. In the state of Minnesota, there are tampons in the men's bathroom. Like, are you kidding me? You have to be a whole next level of nuts in order to put tampons in the men's bathroom. But Tim Walz did it, and Kamala Harris picked him because she believes in his radical, dangerous policies. I said before we're going to talk a little bit about the anatomy of a political nickname. And this is important because a political nickname can't purely be a personal insult. It can't purely be based on what the person looks like. It can't purely be based on the person's mannerisms. It has to encapsulate the primary criticism that may or may not be even unspoken amongst the majority of voters. And what I mean by that, we'll use Crooked Hillary as an example. Crooked Hillary was, I would argue, one of the most effective political nicknames of all time because of two reasons. The number one reason is because people who didn't like Hillary Clinton didn't like her because she was untrustworthy. They believed she was untrustworthy, and they believed that she was corrupt. So using the name Crooked Hillary evokes both of those things. Every time you think of Hillary Clinton, every time you hear that phrase, Crooked Hillary, you are reminded of the reason that you don't like her. She is dishonest and she is corrupt. It also evokes a sort of picture of a witch in your mind, Crooked Hillary, Crooked Hillary. And so it's a personal attack that is substantiated by her behavior and by people's perception of her. The most brilliant political nickname of all time. This is why the newest nickname for Kamala Harris, Laughin Kamala, I think Trump actually dubbed her Laughin Kamala. It's not a good one. It's not a good nickname. It's not effective because it is based solely on a mannerism of Kamala Harris. And it's a mannerism that isn't a turnoff to independent voters, to women voters, or to young people. In fact, if you look on TikTok, there's a trend called I'm Just a Girl. And it's women doing these kind of stupid or things or saying making these dumb comments. And then at the end of them doing something stupid, they're like, well, I'm just a girl. And yes, it's kind of a misogynist trend, but it's very popular among young women because I guess it makes them feel less self-conscious. I'm just a girl. And Kamala Harris, with her goofy laughter, is basically being embraced by this trend of I'm just a girl. So this idea that nicknaming Kamala Harris Laughin Kamala would evoke in people's mind a reason not to vote for her is just not the case. It might play well with a certain element of Trump's base, but it's not going to play well with people who don't know if they're going to vote for her or not. You can contrast that with, and there's not a great nickname for Kamala Harris. I've been calling her Kamala the Commie because it has a nice rhyming element to it, and it also reminds us that she supports, to this day, the neo-Marxist Black Lives Matter movement, that her father was a Marxist professor, that she believes in open borders, all of which are communist policies. But back to Tampon Tim. So we have Tampon Tim, which is funny because it's an insult. No man wants to be called a tampon. But it also tells us exactly what his political history has been, how communist he is, how anti-science he is, how opposed to parental rights he is, how willing he is to harm young people in the name of his own political power. I mean, can you imagine declaring your state a sanctuary state for transgender children? It means children under the age of 18 are allowed to come to that state, and against the wishes of their parents, they're allowed to have puberty-blocking medication given to them. They are allowed to have cross-sex hormone therapy, a pharmaceutical therapy that's not been approved by the FDA, and they're allowed to undergo genital mutilation surgery because Tim Walz wants to win points with the Marxist base of the Democratic Party. So, Tampon Tim, I would pay an almost unlimited amount of money if J.D. Vance in the vice presidential debate between Vance and Walz called Tim Walz Tampon Tim to his own faith. I actually think that we should start a movement on X and online to recruit J.D. Vance to do exactly that. He's based. I bet he'd do it with the proper encouragement. I bet that he would understand that this is a nickname of all nicknames, one of the best of all time. Because Tim Walz is radical and Tim Walz is dangerous. And Kamala picked him, which means that his radical policies are her radical policies.